name is Yasmin Vafa. I am originally from Iran, but based here in Washington, D.C., and I'm a human rights attorney and advocate in the movement to end violence against women and girls. My work at Rights for Girls entails youth engagement, policy advocacy, research, training, and technical assistance, all working to improve the systems that girls encounter and making sure that their voices and experiences are a part of the policy solutions that they feel will improve their lives. Although there's been much incredible work that's taken place in the last decade or so to reduce youth incarceration, a lot of that progress has not extended to girls of color. In fact, for years, while we watched rates of youth incarceration steadily decline, we saw that girls' shares among incarcerated young people steadily rose, and particularly for girls of color, including Black, Latina, and Indigenous girls. I'm originally from Iran, and my family immigrated to the U.S. during the Iran-Iraq War. And so I've certainly experienced discrimination and biases throughout my life as a Muslim woman, as an immigrant from the Middle East. And I think growing up, I experienced other forms of discrimination, things like hypersexualization, fetishization as a Middle Eastern and Muslim woman, and then also some of the effects of the post 9/11 era. So things like enhanced screenings, surveillance, profiling, the Muslim ban, not being able to see or visit family or return to your home country. All of these things have had a detrimental and traumatic impact on me and our community. I think understanding racism as a public health crisis helps us to understand that all of us has a stake in addressing it because it so clearly has a detrimental impact on the well-being and health of our community as a whole. As the saying goes, our liberation is bound. And so I think it serves all of us as a community, as a society, to come together and commit to dismantling this violent system of oppression. We are an all women of color team, and we are deeply aware of how racism and sexism can collude to present specific challenges to girls and young women of color. These dueling oppressions are why we see girls of color experience violence at disproportionate rates. And it's also why they are often denied many of the services and supports that they need to heal. So what's worse is that these survivors and young girls of color are not perceived as victims of crime by either the systems or adults that they encounter. And in some of the worst cases, they're actually criminalized for their victimization through what we call an abuse to prison pipeline. And so that's why Rights for Girls is very intentional about working at the intersections of race, gender, and violence to not just disrupt this harmful pipeline, but to make sure that we are promoting approaches and solutions that offer girls, and particularly survivors of color, opportunities for healing and support. I think COVID has had a serious impact on the well-being of our communities of color, but especially on girls of color. And in so many different ways, we've seen instances of child sexual abuse and family violence increase. We've seen instances of sex trafficking, including familial trafficking and landlord exploitation, increase. All of the challenges and I think hardships caused by things like unemployment, loss of wages, housing instability, food insecurity, all of these have exacerbated existing vulnerabilities amongst already marginalized communities. We're very much committed to centering all of our policies and work around the needs of our most marginalized girls to make sure that our work and our advocacy is inclusive, is intersectional, and is comprehensive and lasting. The YWCA is a national leader, and for them to take up the mantle of confronting racism as a public health crisis is incredibly important. That leadership and that voice is integral right now in the advocacy space, and it's so important to take an intersectional approach that contemplates the impact of racism on communities of color, but especially on young women and girls of color. And so I think that voice and that leadership is key, and we are so proud to be a part of this campaign. COVID has really made it difficult for us to do the level of work that we have done in previous years, but we work with dozens to sometimes hundreds of young people here locally. And then, of course, our policy and advocacy work has a much broader reach, impacting thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of girls across the country through our national and federal policy work and advocacy.